It's in central Gaza, the Nuseirat refugee camp. It's been where a lot of displaced people have gone to try to get away from the war because it was, as a school, they felt it was safe. About 6,000 or so, according to people in Gaza, were in the general area, living and sleeping. And it looks like as many as 40, if not 45, killed. The Israeli army is saying, of course, that it was a precision strike. But I think now the world is increasingly asking, and the United States, you can see by the rhetoric of what the State Department person said before, that even if the intent was what the IDF said publicly. So the US is now publicly questioning Israel, even if what they say is true. But I think the question now for the world, because it was only about a week ago, there was that horrible incident or attack around Rafah, where about 45 people died. A lot of children and women were burnt alive. And I think the world is starting to say, how much longer can Israel keep killing this number of women and children?
Yeah, it brings up that discussion about a red line, doesn't it? When is that indeed crossed? I mean, how do you think, you mentioned that where the US might be sitting with this, what about the rest of the West?
Well, the rest of the West, of course, we just saw countries like Spain joining the South African case. It's interesting, the United States is now saying to Israel, give us the names of the Hamas fighters that you said you were trying to kill. Now, that is, in diplomatic terms, I've never heard that before, where the US is demanding names, because the standard reply, of course, in each one of these, Israel says, we were targeting Hamas people. Now, of course, that may be true or it may not always be true. But as a blanket response, clearly now the United States is saying that they want evidence, they want transparency. And CNN has done an investigation into this, looking at video and the remnants of the bombs. CNN is confirming a short time ago that the bombs that have killed these people in this refugee camp, the school, are American bombs. And they've confirmed that the bombs that were dropped on the Rafah about a week ago on that tent city in the west of Rafah, where people were told to go, are also American bombs. So within the United States now, going into an election, more and more evidence that these civilian killings, whether they killed Hamas or not, and no one can be sure. Israel is saying, at first, we killed 8 or 9 Hamas people. My question would be, how do you know amidst the chaos when the hospitals don't know? They're just seeing dead bodies coming in. How does Israel instantly know that 8 or 9 Hamas fighters were killed? It just seems to me a little bit neat.
You mentioned that narrative there that during the war, Israel has repeatedly accused Hamas of hiding its operatives in schools, in hospitals and out of the buildings as well. This is something that the armed group denies. But could there have been, say, Hamas tunnels underneath this?
There may have been, and Hamas denies it, and they are also telling lies. All sides tell lies in war, usually. It's clearly the government and the American government will try to ensure that the truth doesn't get out, certainly in real time. Hamas sometimes does use, human shields and civilian infrastructure as targets. But we're seeing now a large number of civilians being repeatedly killed, and yet every time the standard answer is it was a precision strike, occasionally like Rafah last week when there was a world uproar with Emmanuel Macron saying that it was outrageous. Then Israel said it was a tragic mistake. But the standard response every time, like initially when they killed that Australian aid worker, at first they denied that it was a deliberate thing, and then they admitted that, yes, it was a mistake. But they targeted that 3 times. So I think the world is growing weary.
So where is left safe for Palestinian civilians to go?
Nowhere. I mean, they were urged
because they were told to go.
They were told to go south by the Israeli army. Some were killed in convoy going south by the Israeli Air Force. They were told to go from the east of Rafah to the west of Rafah for safety. Those 45 people last week, many burnt alive, went to the safe part, they were killed after an Israeli bomb was dropped. So there is nowhere safe to go. It is tiny, Gaza. People forget it's half the size of Canberra, 2.3 million people in there. There is nowhere to go. I've driven from one end of Gaza to the other. You can do it in an hour or so. It is tiny. And so the chaos, the hospital system's crashed, 26 hospitals have closed, many others are damaged. And so it is complete catastrophe. Famine has taken hold, and children are dying from lack of food and water. So you can imagine on top of all of this, and I think the United States is now getting to the point where they say, stop.
Just finally, John, you mentioned the political ramifications for the United States and the complexities surrounding that. What about the political ramifications domestically for Netanyahu? How are Israelis feeling about this?
Well, I think Israelis, with the announcement or the news a few days ago, 4 more hostages confirmed dead, Israeli hostages, and I think that within Israel, the families, the supporters of those hostages are outraged. Let's not forget how this started. Well, it was Hamas's atrocities on October 7, and that started this whole latest war. But I think the Israeli public are increasingly asking, what are we achieving now? We're not smashing the Hamas military machine. The head of Hamas is still on the loose. They haven't caught him. What are we actually achieving by, every week or so killing another 35, 40 people in these incidents or these bombings? So I think they're saying, what's the end game? In fact, Benny Gantz, the former head of the army, has said, who's in the war cabinet, has said to Netanyahu, you have till this weekend to have a clear exit plan, or I am withdrawing from the war cabinet and the government. So Netanyahu is copying it now from all sides.